Dun, 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 dun. Okay, here we go. It's this huge book on yoga anatomy. Can you see that, you guys? Cool. And yeah, I just love the illustrations because it says like right there what it's kind of stretching, and it shows it from different angles. And it also shows like the bottom view of what's going on, which is kind of interesting because we don't see that, you know, when we're in this pose. So visually, I thought it was really interesting, but I wanted to talk about this pose, janu sirsansana, knee to the head to knee pose. And the different variations and kind of also things you kind of want to look for when you're in this pose. So first off, we see here we get a stretch of the spine. It's kind of like this very mild spinal flexion. We also get a big stretch in the hamstrings and the gastroc of the leg. Then we go down here, we could see better there. But also what they don't have read is this bent leg is also in a stretch as well. So I'm gonna stop sharing and just go to me and talk about a few points with this pose. So, let me get this better. So, janu sirasana. So when we're in this pose, let me move this chair. Okay, that's much better. We have quite a bit going on. So first off, the hips are situated on the mat. Some people's knees might go lower and some people's knees might go up. We have flexion of the spine going over the leg, extension of the leg in this leg, the extended leg. We have external rotation of this leg. And then we also have a very slight rotation of the spine. We also have our arms and our latissimus dorsi stretching as well. First thing I want to note about this pose is the knee. So when the knee is flexed and the hip is flexed, basically the femur bone begins to kind of tighten its range on the tibia bone right here, which in turn kind of squashes the meniscus of the knee. So if you've had a history of meniscus tears, flexed knee, flexed hip is not really where you want to be. You kind of want to bend that knee a little bit to get a little more slack from the femur bone. The other thing I want to note about this pose is the breathing. So when we're in this pose, we kind of notice a more shallow breathing in our belly and this more compression as we go over the leg of the intercostals. And we find ourselves in a belly breath, kind of breathing into the hip and the belly region. So those are the two kind of main things I want to take from that. The second is this kind of wide variation of this pose. So we go back to this amazing thing that I can just email everyone the link to since it's not working, is Parivrita Janu Sirasana, which is the overturned one. And so with this one, instead of getting flexion of the spine, you're getting lateral flexion of the spine. And it brings a whole new aspect into like what's going on in the upper body. It's much more opening of the shoulders. You find that you're breathing much more into your ribs up here in upper breathing rather than the belly breathing from this one before. Same with the legs. This one is getting a nice stretch of the hamstrings and the gastroc and the rotation of the hip. I also noted If this hip comes off of the floor when you're in this pose, that's okay. It's gonna take away from the stretch in the side body and the back, but it will not affect the kind of extension here going on. If it is on the floor, then you get that fuller extension of the back. But it's nice to know that, you know, if your hip's off the floor, it's not kind of taking away from the benefits of it. So those are the poses that we are going to do kind of first off the bat. This is supposed to be our runners class, but we made some modifications for it to be more of like a full body class. So, which could benefit runners, walkers, sitters, standers, all of it and above. All right, that's my piece, and I will switch over to Greta.
Awesome. That was such a thorough and excellent intro to class. Thanks, Veronica. So before we get started, I thought that we could start with 3 rounds of Om. And we chant Om to connect through resonance and through sound and through vibration. And I truly miss the sound of hearing everyone Oming in a room. But we are still sharing time and space together by Oming together right now, even though we can't hear each other. Like, it is going on. This is the live class. So taking a moment to feel the connection between your glutes, your sits bones, your feet, whatever is touching the floor. Relax your shoulders down and bring the spine up. We'll do 1 clearing breath and then 3 rounds of Om. Inhale in through the nose. And exhale, HA out of the mouth, release. This time prepare for Om. Inhale. Inhale, breathe in. And exhale, release the breath out. I now have like a fear that my cat is going to attack me while I Om. I'm glad that he didn't. Okay, and we'll start class laying on our backs in Supta Baddha Konasana, or the extended butterfly. I think they call it in Yin. And I'll briefly break down the intentions of Yin Yoga. Bringing the soles of the feet to touch, creating that diamond shape, definitely leaving some distance in between the heels and the pelvis, more so than you would in a vinyasa class, and then letting the back come down to the earth. You can pull 1 hand on your belly, 1 hand on your heart. Maybe you can let them rest on your ribs, wherever it's going to feel safe and interesting to you. And Yin Yoga is a really great practice for receptivity and deep listening, and also rest. And I have been reading this book, and I know Emily's read it, Love and Rage by Lama Rod Owens. And this is the end of the book, so I'm very excited. But he talks about resting. And I thought I would just read from this passage right now, because I know that you know all the tattvas and all the things about yin. So it's nice to have a different perspective in here. The practice that keeps me restored is rest. I know how to rest. Sitting in a chair at the airport waiting for a plane, I can rest, even if it's only 30 minutes. When I say rest, I don't mean sleep. Sleep and rest are not the same thing. Resting means there's a sense of letting go, letting be, dropping things, and just resting the mind, just being with things as they arise. That's my sense of rest. I can go to sleep for hours and hours. It doesn't mean I let go of anything in that rest, in that sleeping. That comes directly from meditation practice. Something that looks self-indulgent actually becomes something about self-preservation because it's giving me a way and a release to come back into the work that I'm called to do. And this is in the chapter on self-care. And I think that line in particular is so important, especially as everyone here does a lot of nurturing in the work that they produce and give to the world. And I think it is really, really important to take those moments for self-care, even if they seem self-indulgent, so you can sustain yourself and continue to grow in that way. And let's see, I guess I will say the tattvas really quick because we're going to be posting this class to YouTube. But the first is to find your gentle edge. The second is to be still. And of course, you are invited to move if you're invited to go deeper into your practice. And we always want to avoid experiencing any pain or any tingling sensations, any sharp stabbing sensations. And lastly, we hold for time, and I keep track of time on my phone. Yeah. And we are about at the halfway mark here. I'll always give a final minute and a halfway mark just so you can more easily surrender into the pose. I think it helps allow us to yield and practice this idea of rest and deep listening and kind of letting go, which is absolutely the energy we want to channel in a yin practice. And we are at the final minute marker. You can begin to remove the hands from wherever they were placed, the belly, the chest, the ribs. Let them come down to your sides. And close your legs like you would close a book, bringing the knees towards center. And slowly make your way up to a seat. You can choose to rock and roll on the spine. You can kind of flop to one side or roll to one side. It doesn't have to be floppy. And then come to a seat. And we're going to practice in yin, it's half straddle. So extending the legs. And this is the pose that Veronica was talking about at the beginning of class. So starting out first with the right leg out, the left knee bent in with the sole of the foot touching the inside seam of your right leg. And giving yourself a moment to set yourself up. You may even want to put something underneath you to help the pelvic bowl tilt downwards. And grab any props that you know you might want to fold over onto. You may want to grab pillows or a block. And slowly begin to fold forward over the right leg. And I didn't know that about the meniscus, so it's kind of nice to know if you've had meniscus damage, you can put a block under the right knee, which is also helpful if you have really tight hamstrings. Taking a moment to arrive into this pose. And yoga is practiced, Yin Yoga is practiced traditionally in silence. And I actually really do love the silent aspect of the Yin practice, especially because they're kind of broken up. It's like a puzzle piece of, or it's like a puzzle of meditation. And so treating each pose as a little meditation. I'll give halfway marks in final minutes. And we may pepper in some details throughout the rest of the class. And you're at the halfway mark. And final minute. And vertebrae by vertebrae, begin to unfurl your spine, press the hands into the earth, lift your chest, and switch sides. Extend the left leg out long, and then bring the right foot into the inside seam of your left leg. And that fold wasn't a super long hold, but we are going to be folding later, so this is just kind of a precursor to what will be coming later. And getting yourself set up on this side, just like you did the other side. Inhale to find length, and exhale to fold forward. And coming into the energetic sphere of receptivity and rest and yielding and allowing what is coming up to just exist, not trying to fix it or plan. I think plan is my number one thing that I label when I meditate. So just trying to give it the space to exist. And we're at the halfway mark. And this is the final minute. And maybe just revisiting those images you saw at the beginning of class, thinking about the underneath part of your leg, also the top, noticing what's going on in the back. I had this realization lately that I think of my anatomy pretty like frontal. And so also zeroing in on your experience, what's going on the back side and on the side of your body. It's three-dimensional experience. And vertebrae by vertebrae, begin to lift your chest, moving slowly. And after those folds, taking any organic movement the body is craving. You may want to press your hips up, hip coming into this form of tabletop, or maybe you want to extend the legs, pressing the hips up, or maybe there's another movement your body is craving that's nothing like what I just mentioned. But kind of enjoying that release after the long holds. And Veronica is going to take us through the next portion of our sequence.
Yes, I am. Okay, our next pose is the favorite. It's child's pose. So I'm sure we've all been here before, but if you haven't, I like to start with kind of sitting on my ankles, either taking my knees wide for a little more lighter flexion of the spine, getting you more into the hips, but you can also take it flat. And then slowly just kind of crawling forward, maybe adding a pillow underneath the chest for extra support, maybe a block underneath the forehead. You can turn one cheek to the mat, and then at the halfway point, switch to the other cheek. We'll be here for 4 minutes. This is kind of our classically grounding pose. So again, remembering what parts of us are touching the mat, what might the mat see if the mat had eyes. And letting gravity do most of the work here. And this is our halfway point. And this is our final minute. All right, moving slowly, coming out. Maybe using your hands to slowly lift your chest up off the ground. Coming to a tabletop position on your mat. Stacking your joints, wrists underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. And take maybe a leg stretch. One leg out, the other leg out. Maybe you want to do some kind of movement of the spine, some cat-cows to wake it up. Whatever the body's calling for. And then when you come back to finding yourself at tabletop, stacked joints. We're going to go into melted heart. I like to approach this from the tabletop and just slowly walking the hands out forward until your chest falls to the mat. This is a big spinal extension. So if this hurts in the shoulders, you can move your arms a little bit wider to maybe meet your edge there. But really, it opens up the sides, opens up the chest, the back, the lower back. I was talking to someone today she's a friend of mine out here. She's in my pod and we practice boxing together. But I was explaining to her what Yin Yoga was. And she just goes, that sounds so good for the nervous system. And I was like, it really is. So I've been looking forward to this class all day because I was telling Greta and Emma the first snow came today in Brooklyn. It was very short and very light, but that kind of signified to me that it's winter and it's about to get real cold and it's just a big change in the season. The weather's letting me know that it's changing. And so with that kind of came a little bit of, heightened anxiety. Not necessarily anything worrisome, just more like this feeling like I have to be prepared. We're at our halfway mark. So when my friend said, oh, that sounds good for the nervous system, I was like, oh, I can't wait for yin. Final minute. All right, time to come out of melting heart. Pushing yourself back up through tabletop. Again, doing any stretches that feel good. After that big extension, might feel good to curl the spine again. Really tucking the chin in to get that flex, that stretch in the neck. Taking some deeper belly breaths. And then we're gonna kind of come to sitting on our feet, kind of in a just regular seat. And we're actually gonna go into the yogi toe squat. We're gonna do it twice, each time for 1 minute, and then with a minute in between. So with the toe squat, it's a little bit of a hotter pose, really brings up a lot of sensation very early on in the pose. So just be aware of that. So with how the toe squat goes is you kind of come forward and you tuck the toes under. Maybe I should take off my socks so you can see my toes. Kind of tucking the toes under like this, and then you're gonna come back to sit on the toes. And I see everyone's there, so I'm gonna start the timer. And you kind of want to bring the weight of your hips over the toes to get them kind of maximum stretch. If this is too much, I say you can even lean forward a little bit so that weight of your hips isn't on them. But our toes are never really in this position, so it's going to be intense. I find it best just to kind of, center into that intensity. If it's really, really painful, then do move out. But we've got about 15 more seconds here. All right, coming out, easy to release that one. And then maybe do an ankle stretch. Really rocking the front of the leg back and forth. Maybe taking a second to roll out each ankle, going one way clockwise, the other way. Getting that movement into all those sticky little joints. And then coming back to sitting on our heels, and we're gonna go into round 2. Starting now. Breathing up to kind of maybe extend the spine or sending the breath to the tip of the toes. They say that the toes are the farthest thing from the head, but they also are these wonderful proprioceptors, They feel the ground. They're meant to kind of hold on to rock. They're meant to kind of test temperature of the ground to see if it's safe to walk over something. So they're these like second pair of eyes to the earth. We've got about 15 more seconds. Okay, coming out, release that pose. Ankles stretch it again. And then grabbing a block if that's nearby and available to you, or maybe a bolster, stack of pillows, but we're gonna move into a short little frog squat. So how the frog squat works is using a block, which might be best for yin. I like to start actually standing up. So I like to start kind of like this, and I find my block at the bottom, right at the SI joint. My feet go quite wide, as you can see, because I have tight hips and adductors, and that's okay because I'm kind of using my arms to stabilize them, kind of tucking my tailbone a little bit to extend the spine, and sending most of my breath to my feet as they kind of ground in here. And we're going to be in frog for 3 minutes. And this gets into kind of the deeper muscles of the pelvic floor. I really enjoy the feeling of gravity kind of pulling on my tailbone, kind of that being like an anchor. This is our halfway point. Last 30 seconds. All right. Coming out of frog, I like to come out like I got in by standing back up and doing a little bit of dangling. Maybe shaking the weight out from one side to the other, shaking the head to relax the neck. Maybe grabbing opposite elbows, swinging from leg to leg. Moving that energy around. Moving the hips around. And then coming back to a seat for our kind of longer hold portion of class that Greta is going to teach.
Cool, thank you. So yeah, coming to a seat, and we're gonna practice next half shoelace with one leg extended. And so for that, extend, let's start with the right leg extended and getting the sits bone set up, maybe removing the glutes if you need to, and then bring the left leg up and over the right. Once you get here, you may want some extra support in between your leg and your knee. You may want to prop it up. And you may just want it there anyway. And taking a moment to feel situated, and then slowly begin to fold forward. And this may be a good time to grab a pillow or something to support the chest. And we really do want to release the torso, totally relinquish all control of trying to keep it like erect and straight. It's okay to have a curved spine here. And this is going to be our 6-minute fold. And then we're going to be doing the other side also. And the whole time during that toe squat, it was so funny because when Veronica and I were playing this class, I was like, oh, I really want to keep the toe squat because I never I very rarely give attention to my feet in that capacity. And then you think about how many like warrior twos and chaturangas you've done and how little the feet are given that kind of attention. And it's no wonder it's met with so much intensity. So I am glad that we did it. Thank you for leading that portion of class, Veronica. Okay, I'm going to leave us to practice the things that we came here to practice, to being kind of with the more lunar qualities, more yin qualities. And we are on the waning part of the moon cycle, headed towards a new moon. So it's a good time to be practicing those qualities. And this is the halfway point. Just taking a moment to check in, maybe giving a face scan, unfurrowing your brow, relaxing your forehead, removing the tongue from the roof of your mouth, unclenching the jaw, relaxing the ears if you can, relaxing your neck, relaxing the chest, the shoulders. Try to relax the ribs, the soft part of the belly, tip of your hip, the thighs, your kneecaps, calves, and your ankles and your feet and all the toes, your arms, your finger pads, releasing all tension. And this is the final minute. And we're coming towards the end here. So begin to strategize how you would like to make your exit. Maybe you press your hands into the floor, lift the chest, slowly unfurl your spine. And from here, we're going to move into half pigeon. And we started with our right leg out. So we're actually going to do half pigeon on the left side first. The left shin is already forward. So you can keep the left shin as it is and send the right leg behind. And give yourself the time to feel like you are held and settled and supported, adding and taking away props as is necessary. And then slowly begin to fold forward. And I'm going to go ahead and set our timer. And I think I actually taught, last time I taught half pigeon, I taught the left side first during the in class. And it almost makes sense with so much emphasis on the lunar qualities, and the left side is associated with those qualities. And I also feel like sometimes we set up the right side and we are so thorough in our description on the right that the left side sometimes gets glossed over. And so it can be nice to come into the left side first and giving yourself the space to be with the hips, knowing it may just be a physical sensation that you're experiencing, but also acknowledging with that stillness that you're creating, you're also creating with that the spaciousness for perhaps an old memory or something like that to surface. And I like to say that every class, because it's not every class that something will come up, but this may be the class where it comes up. So I always want to validate it and acknowledge that that is definitely a part of this practice of turning inward and deep listening. We are a little bit past the halfway mark. And this is the final minute. And part of the practice of yin is time is what creates the magic, not the intensity, not the edge that you find. And I'm finding in this last minute that truth to be very evident. Lift the head, press the palms into the mat, lift your chest, tuck the back toes under, engage your back toe, and come to a three-legged dog to release that pose. Ooh, yeah. And take any posture that you would like. Do flip dog, scorpion dog. And whenever you're done kind of relishing in the echo of the pose, coming down to your knees and letting the hips sink off towards one side. And we'll move into half shoelace on the other side. So this time, extending the left leg out. My leg is like stiff after doing that. And bring the right leg up and over the left, coming into half shoelace. And this side may feel stiff. It may feel completely different than your other side. And that's also normal because we tend to have a dominant side. And the dominant side also tends to have like a history. If you think back on the jobs that you've done in your life and the repetitive actions you've taken, that has influenced the patterns you're holding in your body. And so knowing that's normal, it's part of being human and participating in the world. Okay, I've got the timer going. Getting yourself propped up, assisted, supported, held. And we are at the halfway mark. And this is the final minute. And gently begin to lift your chest, moving slowly, the opposite of urgency, the opposite of fast. Coming up to a tall seat, removing any props that you may have used out of the way. And we will slowly transition into half pigeon on the other side. Of course, you can always take half pigeon on your back in a figure four. But otherwise, we're shifting into the right side. So right shin is forward and bringing the left leg behind. And taking the time to set this up, leveling the hips. Inhale, find length in your spine, and then slowly coming forward. And one of the beauties of half pigeon is you really are so close to the ground, and it's a good time to tap into the energy of the earth and feeling held by the earth, feeling connected and grounded in your own body in this experience, in this practice. This is the halfway mark. And this is the final minute. And slowly begin to press hands into the mat. Walk your hands back towards your hip. Tuck under the back toe, engage your back leg. And release into three-legged dog. You can scorpion dog or roll femur around in the hip socket, pull the ankle. Any counter movement that feels good and that the body is asking for, if it's craving, do that movement. And then come down to a seat. And come to laying on your backs. We're just going to do a gentle supine twist on both sides and then head on into Shavasana. Come to lay on your backs, bring the knees towards your chest. You can roll around on the flat part of your back, sacrum. And then let the legs fall towards the left. Right arm can go out like half of a T. Gaze can be up. Gaze can be directed towards your fingertips. Releasing the spine. And then bringing the knees back towards center. Let the legs fall towards the right. Left arm can go out like half of a T. Gaze can be up. It is kind of like wringing out. I'm like thinking of like a tie-dye t-shirt when you like twist them at the end. Or a washcloth or a towel. Or anything that's wet. And then bring the knees back towards center, coming into a cannonball shape, Apanasana. And release into Shavasana. Final rest, letting the limbs come down at your sides. You can always take final rest in a different position. You can take it in more of a fetal position or on your belly, anywhere where you are really going to feel grounded and to receive the benefits of your practice and to be in stillness and in quiet and to kind of revel in it. I think that they're both beautiful things, and I think that solitude can be bliss. I think that it can be isolating, but I think that in this practice there's kind of like a warmth there, especially when we're practicing together in community through using that as a network of support. And to honor the time limit of this class, I'm going to ask you to begin to invite some movement back into your body. Of course, you're always welcome to stay in Shavasana as long as you need. Begin to invite gentle movements, expanding the fingers, closing them into fists, rolling the shoulders, whatever you need to do to wake up the body. Then bring the arms overhead like you would stretching in the morning, knees in towards your chest, and roll over onto the left side. If you're feeling the right side, go for it. The left side is in line with this practice of receptivity and lunar qualities and of yin. And coming into this fetal position, and Shavasana is final rest. It's also translated as corpse pose, and it's kind of the end of the cycle of this class structure. And I actually like the translation of corpse pose because it reminds you of, not to get all like death and like nitty gritty here, but it reminds you of death, and death is associated with darkness. And it also always reminds me of like the soil, and it reminds me of fall time when the leaves fall, and those leaves, they decay and decompose, but then they turn into soil that is generative, and then things rest, like right now where Veronica was talking about winter, where things kind of rest and sustain, and then come spring they build and they grow into new life. So thinking about this pose as, yes, the end of this class cycle, and when you come up from Shavasana, maybe you rise with more agency, or maybe you are more in trust with the relationship with yourself to be in the uncertainty and the unknown. But tapping into that right now, that sense of empowerment, or whatever it is that you need to channel, and kind of rebirthing yourself into the next cycle as you proceed through the rest of the night into the next day. You can gently press yourself up to a seat, and we'll meet with hands at heart center in the Anjali Mudra gesture, which represents non-dualism and the coming together of these oppositional forces, and where they meet at the heart. And there's a lot of wisdom that resides in the heart, so connecting to that, and then bringing hands from heart center to third eye, the seat of your intuition and imagination, and where you may find clarity. And bowing forward to seal in your practice, honoring the whole self, both the luminous and the dark experiences. And before we exit, we always like to do a land acknowledgement. And I'm occupying the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Salish Duwamish people, and Veronica in Brooklyn is on the unceded ancestral lands of the Rockaway and Canarsie and Lapata people. And I know that, man, I meant to look this up after last class, but Emma is in LA, and I think it starts with a T and has a Y and an N and a G and an A in it, but I have to look it up again. And also honoring the lineage of this practice, going back to India with its roots in the wisdom texts and the long lineage of teachers, and also pulling from Taoist theory and meridian theory and Chinese medicine. So thank you so much for incorporating all those elements into your practice as well. And thank you for being here. Veronica?